was caught flat-footed by the success of the Mustang. It wasn't that GM was unaware of the Mustang's development, but corporate leadership was certain that it would be a flop. Turned out to be far from it, and it quickly became clear to GM that even with a turbocharged engine, the restyled Corvair was no competition for the Mustang. So using the Chevy 2's X-Body platform as a basis, GM created the F-Body Sport Coupe, which Chevrolet introduced as the 1967 Camaro. A made-up name that they thought sounded Italian and fit Chevrolet's naming structure of "it starts with a C and it isn't an animal." Although when asked what it meant, they said it was a small animal that eats Mustangs. It was 185 inches long on a 108-inch wheelbase, and in base trim was under 2,900 pounds. Prices started at around $2,500. It was available as a coupe and convertible, and packages included the Rally Sport with hidden headlights and the performance-oriented Super Sport, two packages that you could combine, and also the Z28. For the most part, the engines carried over from the Chevy 2, including the 230 and 250 straight sixes, with 140 and 155 gross horsepower, as well as variants of the 327 with 210 to 325 horsepower, but also included Chevy's new 350 V8 with 295 horsepower, the engine that was pushed in marketing with the Super Sport package. A 396 cubic inch V8 with 325 horsepower was also offered, giving it a performance advantage over the Mustang. These big block cars were identified by a matte black taillight panel. Transmissions included a 3 or 4-speed manual or a 2-speed Power Glide automatic. The Z28, however, included its very own engine, a 5-liter, 302 cubic inch, 290 horsepower V8 designed specifically for Trans Am racing. It only came with a 4-speed manual and got standard front disc brakes, as well as the performance suspension that was optional on other Camaros. A base sport coupe with the 230 straight 6 and a 3-speed manual did 0 to 60 in just under 11 seconds and the quarter mile in just over 18, with a top speed just under 110 miles an hour. A Super Sport 350 4-speed could do 60 in the low 6-second range and the quarter mile in just under 15 and topped out 10 miles an hour higher. An RS 327 was slightly slower to 60 in the quarter mile, but capable of almost 130, which probably had more to do with the standard gearing than anything else. The Super Sport 396 did 60 in the mid 5-second range and the quarter in just over 14 seconds and had a top speed of 135. And the Z28 did 60 in just under 7 seconds and the quarter mile in the mid-15s, also with a top speed of about 135. First-year total sales were an impressive 220,000. 1968 would see minor changes that included the loss of the wing window and the addition of marker lights, as well as a new 5-liter, 307 cubic inch V8 that was essentially a stroked 283 with 200 horsepower, and total sales would increase to around 235,000. 1969 got more aggressive styling and a 3-speed automatic was added, cowl induction became optional, and the Super Sport got standard front disc brakes. Rear disc brakes were optional on both the Super Sport and Z28, although it is super rare as only 206 cars got them. Speaking of rare first-generation Camaros, the most collectible would be the 427 Camaros. These would include the Yanko Super Camaros created by dealer Don Yanko, which just amounted to a few hundred cars over the 3-year period, as well as the 1969 Special Order Copo Zl1 Camaros of 1969. Rated at 425 horsepower and 460 pound-feet of torque, the Zl1 Camaro could do the quarter mile in under 14 seconds. Due to development delays, the 1969 model production carried over into early 1970, causing some people to refer to the restyled model as a 70.5, even though it was introduced in February of that year. But the short carryover helped 69 production reach nearly 245,000. The new car was longer at 188 inches and slightly heavier, and the convertible was gone. Sales dropped to under 125,000, and the base model still started at around $2,750. The 230 straight 6 was discontinued, and the Z28 moved to the LT1 350, rated at 360 horsepower, putting an end to Chevy's 302. The new Z28 could hit 60 in the low 5-second range and the quarter mile in under 14. High back bucket seats were added for 1971. Packages now included the base Sport Coupe, the Type LT Luxury Touring, the Super Sport, and the Z28. The 396 was replaced by a 402 with 350 gross horsepower, but the car was still marketed as the Super Sport 396. 60 came in just under 6 seconds due to traction issues, and the quarter mile in the mid-14s. Road and Track called the Super Sport 350 one of the 10 best cars in the world. As with everything, 1972 would see horsepower ratings drop from gross to net, meaning the base 250 was now rated at 110 horsepower, the 307 at 130 horsepower, and the 402 at 240 horsepower, while the 350 came in flavors ranging from 200 to 255. Of course, this was all changes in the ratings, not the actual output, so performance remained unchanged. 1972 would also be the last year you could get a Super Sport, as well as the last year of the big block Camaro, as only 670 of over 6,500 Super Sports sold that year were ordered with the 402. 1973 would see the addition of catalytic converters, creating an actual decrease in power, robbing on average 10 to 15 horsepower from each engine. And front disc brakes were now available on all models. With the pending bumper regulations, GM was considering just dropping the Camaro, but found a way to deal with it, so 5-mile-an-hour bumpers were added in 1974, and power steering became a standard feature on all cars equipped with a V8. Speaking of V8s, the 307 was now gone. Length was now over 195 inches, and weight was over 3,400 pounds. Sales would recover to over 150,000 and continue to climb, not in spite of the fuel crisis, but because of it. As compared to most American cars, it was still considered small and economical. The new heavier Z28 was now rated at 245 horsepower, would do an 8-second 0 to 60, and low 16s in the quarter mile, with a top speed of just over 125. A base Sport Coupe was just under $3,200, and a Type LT started at just over $3,700. 1975 got a wraparound rear window, and in response to the nationally imposed 55-mile-an-hour speed limit, the Z28 was dropped and focus was moved to the better-equipped Type LT, but this would turn out to be short-lived. A new 5-liter V8 arrived for 1976, now 305 cubic inches with 140 horsepower, while the revived Z28 350 was down to 165. In 1978, the Camaro got soft, energy-absorbing fascia over the bumpers, making it 2 inches longer. It also got a T-top for the first time, in spite of the Firebird having one available for a number of years. The Z28 got side vents, a fake hood scoop, and body-colored alloy wheels, and prices started at $5,600, or $1,200 more than the base Sport Coupe. It had 160 horsepower with the automatic and 185 horsepower with the 4-speed for a low 8-second 0 to 60 and low 16-second quarter mile. The Berlinetta package would replace the Type LT as the luxury model for 1979 with softer suspension tuning and standard power features. The Z28 gained a front spoiler, and it would be the Camaro's best-selling year, exceeding 280,000. For 1980, Chevrolet's 4.1-liter 250 straight 6 was replaced by Buick's 3.8-liter V6 as the base engine. It provided 25 more horsepower and was 5 seconds quicker to 60 and 1.5 seconds quicker in the quarter mile. Although at the high 12s and mid-19s, it still wasn't fast. The RS got two-tone paint, rear wing, and body-colored wheels. The Z28 gained a functional hood scoop, and stripes were now standard. But by 1981, sales had fallen to nearly 125,000, partly due to anticipation of a new model. This new redesign was 10 inches shorter on a 101-inch wheelbase and nearly 500 pounds lighter, and not surprisingly, it had better handling. It was also a hatchback instead of a fastback. The base Sport Coupe and Berlinetta were easily identified by the 3 slots in the nose, and the Z28 by its ground effects. Base engine was now a 2.5-liter Iron Duke inline-4 with 90 horsepower. The optional engine was a 2.8-liter V6 with 102 horsepower, and the top engine was a fuel-injected version of Chevy's 5-liter, 305 cubic inch V8 with 145 to 165 horsepower. Transmission options were a 3-speed automatic or 4-speed manual, which would be replaced the next year with a 4-speed automatic and 5-speed manual. It was voted Car of the Year, and nearly 190,000 sold. Prices were up roughly $500 from the previous model, starting at $7,600 and just over $9,700 for a Z28. The 4-cylinder did 0 to 60 in about 13 seconds, and the quarter mile in the low 19s. The V6 in about 12 seconds and high 18s, and the Z28 in the low 9s and about 17 with the automatic, low 8s and low 16s with the manual. For 1985, the Z28 got hood louvers, and there was a new International Race of Champions edition, IROC Z, with body-colored ground effects and 16-inch wheels. The 5-liter was up to 190 horsepower, with low 7-second 0 to 60 and mid-15-second quarter mile. The 350, or 5.7-liter, returned for 1986 with 220 horsepower and 320 pound-feet of torque, but only with the automatic, bringing 60 in about 6.5 seconds and the quarter mile in just over 15. The IROC Z was just over $12,000, easily $3,000 more than the base Camaro. The convertible returned for 1987, and the 4-cylinder was dropped. Sales hit a low in 1990, down to around 35,000, while the base V6 was up to 3.1 liters and 140 horsepower. The following year, there would be a police package and more fleet sales. By 1992, the 5-liter was up to 230 horsepower, and the 5.7 to 245. And the manual 5-liter was as quick in the quarter as the 350 car, still only available with an automatic. There was also a 25th anniversary edition. The redesign for 1993 would see the car get bigger, gaining back 5 inches and 300 pounds. Base RS engine was now a 3.4-liter V6 with 160 horsepower that with a 5-speed manual could do 60 in the low 8s, and the quarter mile in about 16.5, or the same as the V8 with the same amount of power a decade before. It started at just over $13,000, while the Z28 was now over $17,000. The 350 could now be had with the 6-speed manual, and with 275 horsepower, could do 60 in the mid-5s and the quarter mile in the low 14s. The convertible was added to the new body style for 1994, and sales were now up to $120,000. The 3.8-liter V6 returned as the base engine for 1996, now with 200 horsepower. And the Super Sport package also returned. With 310 horsepower and 335 pound-feet of torque, it could do the quarter mile in under 14 seconds. 1997 saw new 17-inch wheels, but for 1998, the top engine would become the LS1. Still 5.7 liters, but slightly smaller at 346 cubic inches, although sometimes it was still called the 350, and with 320 horsepower and 345 pound-feet of torque, it was a few tenths quicker. 2001 would see a new low-end sales of under $30,000. Prices were up to $17,000 for a base model and nearly $22,000 for a Z28. And after a 2002 35th anniversary, the Camaro was canceled. But it would be revived again 8 years later, for 2010, on the Zeta architecture, giving the Camaro independent rear suspension for the first time. Wheelbase was up to 112 inches, length 190, and weight a whopping 3,800 pounds. Base engine was a 3.6-liter, 304 horsepower V6, and the optional engine, a 6.2-liter V8 with up to 426 horsepower, and a 6-speed manual or an automatic. Prices started at $23,000 for the LS and $30,000 for the Super Sport. First-year sales were just over $80,000, climbing to about $88,000 the following year. 2012 saw yet another anniversary edition and the supercharged Zl1 with 580 horsepower. 2014 saw some minor styling updates and the return of the Z28 with a 7-liter LS7 505 horsepower V8 and weight reduced by cutting features. The 2016 redesign moved to the new Alpha platform, making the car smaller and lighter by about 200 pounds. Engines included a 2-liter turbo 4-cylinder with 275 horsepower, a 3.6-liter V6 with 335 horsepower, a 6.2-liter LT1 with 455 horsepower, and a supercharged Zl1 with 650 horsepower, capable of over 200 miles an hour. Styling was similar, but base price was near $26,000, and it would once again be Car of the Year. But sales were under $30,000 again by 2020. The Camaro in its current form has a few more years left in it. If it exists beyond that point, it may no longer be a coupe, and it may even only exist as an electric. We shall have to see. But until then, thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment below, like, and subscribe.